What's going on, guys? Cultimush back at it with my MSI GeForce GTX 950 2GB video card performance review. Now, before I jump into the games, I want to cover a few things real quick. This GPU is around $160 right now, $150 if you decide to use the mail-in rebate that's included, and we're going to talk about this GPU's price a little bit more in depth at the end of the video, so stay tuned for that. And this GPU has a core clock of 1076 MHz, a boost clock of 1253 MHz, 768 CUDA cores, and all the tests you're about to see were ran on stock settings. I'll upload a video in a few weeks on overclocking this GPU and the performance it gets after OCing. But this video is just going to take a look at this GPU on its stock clock. Now onto the games. The first game I tested was Witcher 3. I know a lot of you guys would be interested in this. I first tested the game running on the Ultra preset with the Hairworks features turned off, and the GTX 950, to put it simply, cannot play The Witcher 3 at a playable frame rate at 1080p on the Ultra setting. Yes, there are going to be times where the game is above 30 frames per second, but there are many times where the game dipped to below 20 frames per second, and when you're getting only 19 frames a second, I'm sorry, I think at that point you just gotta lower the settings. You don't want to be playing any kind of game at that frame rate. But hey, if you are one of the few that's okay with the 19 frame rate dip, then I guess you can play The Witcher 3 at Ultra settings with the GTX 950. Next, I lowered the game settings to high with the Hairworks features once again turned off, and the game did much better this time around. I was getting around 30 to 35 frames per second, and at times it would be hovering around 40 frames per second, so it was comparable to a console and probably a bit better, and Witcher 3 on high on a PC definitely looks better than what you would play on a console. Finally, I ran the game at its medium preset, and this time around it didn't even go below 40 frames per second. It was staying around 42 to 45, and there was times where I did go above 50 frames per second, so definitely on medium settings it was totally playable, but you can play The Witcher 3 at high as well. I would stay away from playing The Witcher 3 on Ultra on this GPU unless you do some overclocking, and even then, probably not going to be the performance you guys are looking for. Next, I tested Grand Theft Auto 5, and Grand Theft Auto 5 has so many different settings to adjust, so I'll just show you guys the settings here. Now, at these settings, Grand Theft Auto 5 played really well. There was only a few times it dipped under 60 frames per second, and most of the times it was well over 60 FPS. GTA 5 is a game where there's a lot of settings to tinker with, so you can always adjust it to meet your performance need, but at these settings, GTA 5 played really well, and getting 60 frames per second at 1080p on a GPU like the 950 was definitely a pretty good thing. Next, I tested Metro Last Light, and yes, this is an older game. I think this came out in 2013, but man, Metro Last Light still looks amazing. I was running the game at 1920 by 1080 on high with SSAA off, texture filtering at 4x, and tessellation was also off. And with these settings, I was able to get around 40 to 45 frames per second, which was definitely playable. And on PC, this game just looks fantastic. Yes, it is an older game. Like I said, it came out in 2013, but this still holds up with all the games coming out today. And when this game came out in 2013, and honestly still to this day, it's still pretty hard to run. Also, I had to test out Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain since it's fresh in everyone's mind. Game was running at 1920 by 1080 with the settings completely maxed out. Wasn't getting a locked 60 frames per second, but the frame rate was still definitely playable. It was around 50 to 55 frames, and in some of the more intensive sequences, it would dip down to around 45, but that's still definitely playable. And if you do want to lower a couple of the settings, there's a lot to choose from, and it's not too difficult to get 60 frames per second consistently on Metal Gear Solid 5 with the GTX 950. Finally, the final two games are games that people always ask me to test out, even though they're lower-end games. First, we have Counter-Strike Global Offensive, 1920 by 1080, settings were maxed out. You guys can see the frame rate, it was very high. You can play it no problem with the 950, I was getting north of 150 frames per second, so that's definitely playable. And then we also have League of Legends, once again, completely maxed out at 1920 by 1080, and at times I was getting over 200 frames per second. Either Counter-Strike Global Offensive or League of Legends, you can even play those games at 1440p and you'll have no problem. Alright, so with the games out of the way, you guys can see that performance is decent. For a budget-end video card like this, it's not too bad. The problem with this video card right now is that its pricing is so freaking weird. So this GPU is $150 after the $10 mail-in rebate. Well, you can pick up an MSI GeForce GTX 960 that's $170 after the mail-in rebate and get a free copy of Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain. So that's a bit weird, and as far as AMD goes, you can pick up an AMD R9 283GB video card for around $165 after the mail-in rebate. So the price difference between those two, honestly, I would say stay away from the GTX 950 unless you only have like a 400 watt power supply. Just pick up a GTX 960, it's only $10 or $20 more, and you get a free copy of Metal Gear Solid 5. And with the R9 280, it's only about $15 more, and you get a free copy of Dirt Rally. So right now, I really can't recommend the GTX 950. The 960 and the R9 280 being so close in price to it just kind of makes it a dead graphics card. Even with the performance being alright in the future, if Nvidia does lower this price, maybe pack in a free game, that might increase the value of this GPU, but as of recording this video, I cannot recommend the GTX 950. It's just got really weird pricing. This GPU should really be only around $130, and then I would have an easier time recommending it. Right now, I just can't. So as always, guys, thanks for watching this video. I would say stay away from the 950, pick up a 960 or an R9 280. So as always, guys, thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a great day. Peace out.